What does Wales mean to me? I suppose the first thing that comes to mind is I feel like I chose Wales. I decided I was going to be here for the rest of my life, and I made a conscious decision to choose a place, choose a country to live in. And I think there's something very profound when you choose. And I think I chose in not just a conscious way, but in a long-term way. I decided I'd live out my days here. And that feels like a very profound thing to choose to do. There is a hospitality. It's a different kind of hospitality to maybe the one I grew up with in the Middle East. But it's still an openness, a willingness, a kind of lack of pretentiousness, lack of trying to prove oneself or pull rank. Of course, that will exist amongst individuals and institutions. And maybe it comes from experiencing a colonial history, your neighbour always being the bigger, the more powerful, and you're trying to catch up, you're trying to deal with the impacts of the way your neighbour treats you and has treated you historically. That figuring out that I think is happening in Wales, that trying to figure out identity, who are we, what does it mean to assert a sense of self? The idea of independence for me is about our independence of mind, independence of thought, our capacity to think in a way that isn't subject to just conforming, that isn't subject to doing and thinking in the same ways because everyone else is. Like, what does it mean to truly stand apart? What does it mean to truly hold your ground? What does it mean to maintain your principles or your vision or your beliefs when it's hard to do that? And I mean that in so many ways, interpersonally, politically, socially, culturally. To truly know who you are and what you are thinking is vital, and not just in order to accept, this is who I am, this is what I think, but to kind of question that within yourself. I think without that relationship of inquiry with ourselves, we can't really understand what is good in a wider context, what's healthy for a nation, what's healthy for a people, what's healthy for a culture, what's progressive, what's just, what's fair. What does it mean to create new futures if we cannot think through our own sense of independence of thought, to imagine those futures, to go beyond what's just handed on a plate to us or what capitalism tells us we ought to be or aspire to? We need an independence of thought. We need a kind of spirit of imagination to think through different possibilities. Land in relation to an independent Wales makes me think of how we have used land and how that can change. Having access to ways of generating energy and generating our own sustainability in the world, I think is really key when I think of land. How can the resource-based relationship to land play out in our world in a way that feels equitable, that doesn't continue to maintain those huge disparities? I also think the other piece about land is to do with our very direct relationship to it. And I think a future independent Wales needs to help us open our own relationship to the earth, to the soil, to the processes of re-wedding ourselves to how land can be a deep source of our relationship to living in the way our ancestors would have had. And I think that is a sacred relationship. We have lost that through industrial processes. We've lost that through rampant consumerism. And Independent Wales for me is a place where we re-knit that relationship with understanding that we can only truly have a radical future if we mend that relationship to the earth.